I'm here with Kirsten Wise, who's the Mayor of Napier. Kia ora, Kirsten. Nice to see you.
Kia ora, Andrew. Good to see you too.
Yeah, so Kirsten, it's been a big year by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously, you've had long-term plan, which probably isn't the best that you've had over the years, given the number that was attached to it. No one wants to be putting out rates increases like that. But just to recap, how has the year gone for you? How have you found things?
Uh, Look, any year that I don't have to declare a state of emergency is definitely a good year. So
Good.
I guess we'll start with that. We have been in recovery, obviously, from Cyclone Gabrielle. So there has been work to do, not just for us here in Ahuriri Napier, but for the whole of the region. So that's been one of our key areas of focus. And really, it's been a year of focusing on our infrastructure and actually getting on with a whole lot of projects that have been delayed previously, either because of the cyclone or because of COVID or because of our 2020 floods. So in the whole scheme of things, it was actually a year of relative calm, and we were able to just crack on and get things done.
But that rates increase, it must have stuck in the throat a little bit, having to go out and ask ratepayers to stump up that sort of money, especially during times like that. As a council, are you confident that you've done everything you can to keep rates down as much as possible, and also to control spending, and that, given you having to focus on the cyclone recovery?
We're always looking at ways to find savings and to be more efficient. And we're working through our draft annual plan for next year at the moment and setting some pretty challenging targets for our Chief Executive in terms of identifying some cost savings for that. In saying that, here in Napier, we have historically underrated.
Yeah.
For 20 odd years, we had the lowest rates increases basically in the country for the councils of a similar size to us, and that's not sustainable. So that large rates increase in the year that's just gone really was a reflection of just trying to catch up in a lot of ways, as well as the recovery work and other projects that have been going on. But certainly I'm not anticipating any time in the near future going out with a proposed rates increase anywhere near that. And we're certainly working as hard as we can to keep it as affordable for our community as we possibly can.
And the infrastructure, obviously, you have said in the past that there was a bit of an underinvestment in the infrastructure. How's the focus on that going on now, and what's the plan going forward?
We have a huge capital program that we're looking at the moment. For example, if I look at next year, the 25-26, which is probably double what we have ever planned to do in a 12-month period before. There are some big projects in there, such as Te Aka in our civic precinct project, which will be obviously externally sort of resourced. So we won't be internally having to do a lot of work on that. And if it wasn't for that, there's no way we would ever be able to achieve that much work in a year. Another big component of that is the continued focus on our water infrastructure. We've got some very, very challenging timeframes from central government in terms of meeting the new regulatory requirements in that space. So yeah, it's definitely a huge focus for us.
Because that local water done better is quite a challenge for you as a council and as a region. It does seem like you do need a regional focus to it.
Well, that's certainly what we're looking at the moment. We've got a business case being prepared, which will come to all of the councils early in the new year, and that really does do some good analysis around what that regional model would look like. We are also doing our own analysis for a standalone Napier City Council model at the same time. We think it's important to compare what the two of those look like, and then absolutely will be going out to our community for consultation in the first half of next year.
Now, one of the things that you were looking at in terms of sort of maximising profits and creating revenue was a council controlled trade organisation, is it CCTO? And you've set one up and that. How is that going? It's early days, but how's that going?
So we are due for that to actually kick off in terms of being an entity of its own right from the 1st of July next year. We do actually have a paper coming to our final council meeting of the year tomorrow, which outlines the first tranche of assets that we will be looking for the CCTO to manage. So council will retain ownership, and the council-controlled trading organisation will manage those assets to maximise the profit that we make from them, so that can then offset our rates. So, we're looking to transfer the likes of Parklands, so that whole development, of the property there is really got a commercial focus, and we can maximise that. We're looking to transfer the bulk of our leasehold properties that we own, probably not all of them. We'll probably hold on to a few of the more strategic ones, our shares in the airport. So yeah, in total, it's around probably between $130 and $160 million worth of assets that we will have the CCTO managing, and just making sure that we can make as much profit out of them as we can.
Now, another thing we've been involved in is the future development strategy for Napier and Hastings. And there's been a bit of to and fro on that about particularly Riverbend and that. Are you happy with your council's decision on Riverbend?
So we haven't made a decision on Riverbend yet. All that we've decided is that we would include it in the consultation document.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because we want, that's right. We want to hear the views of our community. What I am confident in is the extensive work that our council officers have done with the landowners at Riverbend Road around what mitigation measures would be required before they could develop there. So what would have to be done by those landowners in terms of flood mitigation, etc. We've been working with them for over 3 years. The level of detail they've provided us is actually at resource consent sort of stage. So that was the basis for me personally to decide we do need to include that piece of land in the consultation on the future development strategy.
Because regional council is not keen on it at all, and they've actually taken it out in their proposal. But do you see it being in the end, in the final? Do you see all councils agreeing to it, or the regional council and you?
Well, it will ultimately come down to the final decision of the 3 councils once we've received submissions. Those submissions are being heard by an independent panel of commissioners, which I think is really good, because they can take, they're all experts in the field of looking at these sorts of developments and the regulatory requirements around them. They will then provide a recommendation back to the Future Development Strategy Committee, who then makes a recommendation to the individual council. So we've still got a way to go, and I would just be crystal ball gazing at the moment if I sort of tried to predict what the end outcome might be.
Yeah. Now, housing obviously is a big issue for you. We need more housing, and that. How are you confident that you on track to sort of getting on top of this issue as a council?
Yes, absolutely. And we're only one, obviously, of the parties involved in developing the necessary houses we need here. But we're also, alongside the future development strategy, we've been looking at our district plan, which is one of the other tools that we use to plan for growth in the city. And here in Napier, we don't have a lot of land. So one of the sort of key components of our planning around growth is intensification. So building up and just making the most of the land that we do have. We're about halfway through consultation on our draft district district plan at the moment, and we've been getting some good positive feedback on the intensification strategy. And we do still have some of the new greenfield sites, such as the Mission Hills development, obviously out in Taradale. We've got Mana Ahuriri. They've got a number of sites that they're planning to develop on, such as Whararangi Road. So yeah, we definitely have all the building blocks that we need, and we just need to carry on working with our local landholders, holders and developers and keep moving towards that target.
That term building up sometimes scares people a little bit. What you think we're not going to suddenly see Napier turned into this this high-rise sort of concrete jungle kind of thing?
No, absolutely not. There will be limits to the heights. The intensification will be limited to certain areas throughout the city as well, closer to sort of urban centres and things like that. So we're really conscious of not wanting to lose, you know, the beauty that we have here in Napier and all the beautiful sort of heritage houses and the beautiful Art Deco houses. So we need to protect that. And it's a balancing act between meeting those growth needs and still ensuring that we're an attractive place to live.
Yeah, because you've got a lot of history. And speaking of history, 150 years. Quite nice for that to fall on your watch, eh?
Oh, look, really, really special. We've had some incredible events throughout the year, culminating last month in November, with 28th of November being the actual anniversary date.
Yes.
So loved sharing those events and celebrating with our community. I think we all needed some positive things to go out and do together. So there was the Whānau Fest at Anderson Park. We had our special commemoration service up at the Sound Shell. And we were also really lucky that we had some visitors from our sister city in Canada, being the city of Victoria, to come and visit and share some of those celebrations with us as well, which was very exciting.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. And now another thing that's come up in terms of recently is the whole thing about Hawke's Bay tourism and the regional council making a decision that from middle of next year they're going to pull funding for the regional council for the Hawke's Bay tourism. Hawke's Bay tourism is saying this is going to mean they're going to basically have to shut up shop. And there was I think the indication from the regional council is that it's the turn of the other councils to sort of start funding this. What's your view on the situation, and how important is Hawke's Bay tourism?
Hawke's Bay tourism is incredibly important. I mean, tourism as a sector is sort of the third largest contributor to our local economy, with, you know, $270 million, you know, per annum to our GDP, providing over 5,000 jobs. And Hawke's Bay tourism is one of the key, you know, stakeholders and parties responsible for ensuring that it is successful. And look, we actually, my view is that we do need to be working together as a region to ensure that Hawke's Bay tourism continues. So we are continuing to discuss what that might look like. And yes, Hawke's Bay Regional Council has obviously been funding that for quite some time, but essentially they have been the collection agency and then sort of rating at that centralised point to then fund a regional agency. They've made this decision to no longer want to do that. We'll be continuing to discuss that with them as well. We're not prepared to let this fall over at this point in time. So I think the next couple of months will be vital in terms of what the future might look like for Hawke's Bay tourism.
So you would be happy with a proposal where yourself, Hastings, Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay and the Regional Council all contribute towards Hawke's Bay tourism?
Yes, absolutely. And we've already made a provision in our draft annual plan to make a contribution to a model such as that.
What if the regional council says that's great, they want all the other councils to, but they don't want to be part of it? What would you say to that?
I think that would be disappointing. I think they should be contributing to it as well. So, as I said, that's an ongoing conversation at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, we've spoken at length in previous interviews about local government, the future of local government, the model of local government, and you and other mayors have indicated that it's not in the best health, but the model does need to be looked at. How are talks on that going with central government and through local government, New Zealand and that?
Sadly, with the incoming new government, the progress that had been made in terms of the review of local government and some of the suggested changes, particularly around new funding mechanisms, have been shelved. Local Government New Zealand, as our advocacy body, continue to engage with central government to try to progress those conversations. But I think right at this point in time, I can't see anything changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
And that obviously disappoints you.
Oh, look, it absolutely does, because the reality is that local government is not going to be able to be sustainable in its current form. And we've got the Local Waters Done Well component, which will actually be taking a significant portion of our revenue away from local government. We've got central government talking about rates caps, which, based on what we've seen in Australia, we know leads to significant underinvestment in infrastructure and just not good outcomes for communities. We've got central government at the moment reducing some of the funding and levies that they currently send through to us. And we've got them pushing additional work onto us without any funding to support it. So yeah, it's a pretty challenging space at the moment.
Is there more that you as a region, as a council, a region, and as a local government New Zealand do to sort of, I suppose, try and change the government's mind?
Unfortunately, because of the way our structure is here in New Zealand between central government and local government, we are very much the little brother or little sister, if that's one way to refer to it. We have very limited ability and power to influence the central government decision-making processes. We sit under a legislative statute, basically, so it's no different from greyhound racing New Zealand at the end of the day. In terms of how we can engage with central government, we have no additional rights or powers other than that. So it does make it incredibly difficult.
Now, just in terms of models, it was suggested to me that one model is to maybe increase income tax and fund local governments through that. Would that be viable to you, you think?
That certainly isn't something that came through in the recommendations from the Future for Local Government. There were recommendations around local government receiving a portion of GST, goods and services tax, which I think is something that absolutely should be further investigated. There was also the recommendation around central government actually having to pay rates on land and currently. So it's really interesting because central government here in New Zealand receives 93% of the tax take, and we receive 7% of the tax take. So I certainly think there is some room for movement there, and I'm hopeful that in the years to come that we can see some changes being made.
So would it be fair to say that you have found dealing with this new coalition government more challenging than the last government?
Absolutely.
And why is that so? Because they keep saying no to you on everything.
Basically a combination of saying no to everything and also pushing, as I said, additional things onto us, which increase our costs, and also asking us to complete things in incredibly tight timeframes. There doesn't seem to be any desire to work in partnership with us. It really has just felt like they just wanting us to do as we're told, basically.
And what are some of those things that they're pushing onto you? You mentioned something, but what are some of the concerns for you?
I guess, well, in terms of not so much what they're pushing onto us, but one of the things that they're looking at the moment is reducing the waste levies that we receive. So currently through a funding mechanism, we receive a portion of levies that are collected to use locally to encourage, better sort of waste management behaviours. And they're currently looking at reducing that significantly in terms of the share that we get. So it's just a combination of different things like that all add extra pressure on us when we're already under significant financial pressure.
Because as a local level with the MPs, you've got a good relationship with them, and with the other mayors in the region, you actually form quite a good team, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And, if I reflect on the 11 years that I've been on council and the progress with our regional relationships that has occurred in the last sort of 4 to 5 years, we've come an incredibly long way, and we're very committed to continuing to work together as a region, and part of that is also looking at ways that we can share services and find ways to work more efficiently and effectively for all of our communities. So I just see that continuing to go from strength to strength.
And just in terms of looking back on the year, what sort of pass mark, if you want, for want of a better term, would you give your council?
Oh, goodness, that's a tricky
Or
one.
how have you done? How well have you done? Are you happy with your progress?
Oh, look, I'm really happy with our progress. So I'm really happy that we've had a year of relative stability, which has enabled us to really focus on getting some projects delivered and making significant progress in some of our bigger projects. So we've had a lot on our plate, but I think we've also delivered a lot more in this sort of last year than we've been able to do in the years leading up to that, and we're in a really, really good position, I think, moving into 2025 to just continue to build on that and continue to deliver what our community needs.
And what are the priorities for you as mayor and your council going forward?
Oh, look, it's absolutely continuing to focus on that financial sustainability to ensure that we are keeping things as affordable as we possibly can for our community, but at the same time, make sure that we are investing in our infrastructure so that we've got resilient infrastructure that meets the needs of our community. So it's always a balancing act, and it's always going to be challenging, but we're committed to just being as efficient and effective as we possibly can be.
And despite all the doom and gloom, are you optimistic for the future?
Oh, look, I really am. We've got a great team at council. Our chief executive, Louise Miller, who's been in the role coming up 2 years now, has provided, again, a really great, stable environment for everybody to focus on what needs to be done. And I think we've got some really exciting things on the horizon that just, we need some positivity. We need some great stuff happening out there. And I'm just hoping we continue to have some relative calm that will enable us to do that.
I ask you this every interview. You still got energy, you've got and fuel in the tank to keep going? Absolutely.
Yes, election year next year, and any politician you talk to will say they don't particularly enjoy election year, although a bit of competition is never goes astray, I guess. So yes, no, I'll be restanding in 2025.
Excellent. Kirsten Wise, thank you so much for your time. As always, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and have a good break and see you in the new year.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew.